They miss you in silence, but they'll never admit it. That's how it always begins. Not with words, not with messages, not with closure. It begins in the quiet, in those strange, empty moments when their phone lights up and it's not you, when the noise fades and all that's left is truth. They pretend they've moved on, they post, they laugh, but the silence always finds them, and when it does, the mask starts to crack. You've probably felt that silence too, the one that hits harder than words ever could, the kind that makes you question everything. Did they ever care? Did it ever mean anything? You scroll, you replay, you search for signs. But what if the silence isn't punishment, brother? What if it's reflection, yours and theirs? Because when the noise dies, the truth begins to speak. And that's where this journey takes you. In this video, we're going to decode what happens in that quiet after everything ends, the storm, the separation, the fading contact. You'll see what unfolds in both minds when the messages stop, and how that silence, which once felt like rejection, becomes the very space where power and peace are born. So before we start, ask yourself this: do you still chase closure, or have you started building peace without it? Drop a 1 if you still wait for answers. Drop a 2 if you've learned to live without them. Start this journey now, because before silence becomes your strength, it first feels like loss. Phase 1. The quiet after the storm. It always begins the same way. The messages stop. The calls fade. The noise disappears. The person who once filled your days with words suddenly vanishes into silence, leaving you in a strange space between confusion and denial. At first, that quiet doesn't feel peaceful. It feels punishing, like the world has gone still just to make you hear the echo of your own thoughts. You sit there wondering, was I too much? Or was I never enough? That's the danger of silence. It doesn't just surround you. It turns inward, forcing you to face yourself. In those first few days, your mind becomes the loudest thing in the room. You pick up your phone out of habit, checking for a message that never comes. You scroll through old conversations, reading them like they hold some hidden clue to what went wrong. You replay the last time you spoke, the tone of their voice, the way their eyes looked before they walked away. Every detail feels like a puzzle piece, but no matter how hard you look, the picture stays incomplete. Every evening grows heavier, and that's when the silence starts to test you. You lie in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the version of yourself that existed before all of this, the one who didn't wait on someone else's validation to feel whole. It hurts because you remember how effortless it used to feel. But the truth is, this moment, this aching quiet, isn't punishment, it's transformation. Because silence has a way of testing the very thing your ego hates most: not knowing. You want closure. You want explanation. You want control. But the Stoics taught something different. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Those words hit differently when you're staring at a blank screen, realizing that no text, no apology, no "I miss you" will ever give you peace. Peace isn't received. It's built, one moment of restraint at a time. And while you think they're out there celebrating freedom, they're not. People rarely walk away as confidently as they pretend to. That's the illusion the ego creates to survive the silence. They distract themselves with noise, new people, and fake smiles, because quiet forces reflection, and reflection brings regret. So while you're there fighting to understand, they're fighting to avoid. You're both in the same storm, just on different sides of it. You see, silence isn't empty, it's full. It holds everything you didn't want to admit. It reveals the parts of you that were too dependent on attention, too reactive, too ready to give everything just to keep someone close. And that realization, though painful, is what sets you free. Because silence strips you down to what's real. It shows you who you are without the noise of someone else's validation. There's a night, every man remembers it, when he finally stops checking the phone, not because he stopped caring, but because he's too tired to keep caring the same way. That night, something changes. You breathe deeper. You stop refreshing the chat. You stop waiting for a message that no longer holds the power it once did. That's the moment silence turns from torment to teacher. It's not that the pain disappears overnight. It lingers, it visits, it tests you. But day by day, that storm inside begins to calm. The same silence that once broke you starts building you. You wake up one morning and realize you haven't thought about them for hours. You drink your coffee slower. You move through the day lighter. And for the first time in weeks, you feel like you're coming back home, to yourself. The silence that once felt like rejection becomes redirection. It's the mirror showing you what needed to end and what's ready to begin. You realize you can fill that space with panic or with purpose. You can use it to chase the noise again or to rebuild your center. The choice is yours. But when you start choosing calm over chaos, that's when everything shifts. Because the truth is, the storm never destroyed you. It just stripped away what was never stable. It cleared the noise so you could finally hear the only voice that matters, your own. It's in that quiet that you rediscover your strength. Not the kind that shouts or proves, but the kind that endures. The kind that doesn't chase what walks away, but welcomes what's meant to stay. So if you're sitting in that silence right now, wondering what it means, don't run from it. Let it reshape you. Let it reveal you. Every man who's ever rebuilt himself started right here, in the aftermath, in the quiet, when there was nothing left to hear but the truth. The quiet after the storm isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of your rebirth. Because while you were waiting for a message that never came, something else arrived instead. Peace. And that, brother, is the moment your silence stops being weakness and starts becoming wisdom. Comment calm over chaos if you've ever felt that shift, and if you're ready to let the silence rebuild you. Phase 2. The hidden war inside them. They look calm from the outside, posting pictures, laughing with friends, keeping busy, but that calm is camouflage. While you wrestle with stillness, they're wrestling with themselves. They thought walking away would give them control, that silence would mean freedom. It didn't. It only gave them space to hear the things they've been running from. Because when the noise fades, truth gets louder. Every person who walks away eventually faces the same war, the one between ego and emotion. During the day, they can hide behind distractions. They throw themselves into work, talk to new people, scroll endlessly just to keep their minds busy. But when the world goes quiet, the mask slips. That's when they open your chat at midnight, stare at your name for too long, type something, delete it, and pretend it never happened. They'll skip a song halfway through because it hurts to remember how you used to hum it. They'll tell their friends they're fine, laugh it off and say, "I just needed space." But deep down, that's not truth. It's defense. See, most people were never taught how to sit with regret. So they bury it under movement, under noise, under temporary faces that can't fill the silence you left behind. They try to treat emptiness with attention, but nothing works for long. The moment they're alone, the quiet starts whispering. It's the sound of their conscience reminding them what they lost. It's not the kind of silence that brings peace. It's the kind that punishes. Because the calm they once wanted now feels like a mirror, and they don't like what they see in it. Imagine her scrolling through your old photos, pretending it was an accident. She watches your story but doesn't like it, afraid you'll notice. She thinks about texting, then convinces herself it's better to wait. Pride tells her she's fine. Ego tells her you'll come back first. But emotion keeps asking, what if he doesn't? That's the battle no one sees, the silent war between what they feel and what they'll admit. This is what happens when someone mistakes detachment for strength. They suppress emotions thinking it's control, but Stoicism teaches something deeper. To be calm is not to be unfeeling, it's to be unmoved by what doesn't serve your peace. They misunderstood silence. They thought yours was surrender, but it was strategy. And now their own silence has become the teacher they can't ignore. When they lay in bed at night, scrolling in the dark, they replay moments they tried to bury. The way you looked at them when you listened, the patience they called boring, the loyalty they took for granted. Those memories start pressing against the walls of their denial until the illusion cracks. The new people, the smiles, the posts, they all begin to feel hollow. Because you can't outrun peace once you've felt it. And you were peace. They just didn't recognize it when they had it. So yes, they miss you, but not the way movies show it. It's not grand gestures or 3 a.m. confessions. It's quiet. It's them looking at their phone and putting it down again. It's guilt mixed with curiosity, regret hiding behind pride. They miss you in silence not because they stopped caring, but because admitting it would collapse the image they built of themselves. And ego, brother, always fights to survive longer than the truth. Their silence isn't strength, it's struggle. It's the sound of someone trying to convince themselves they're fine, while everything inside says they're not. But that's not your battle anymore. You've already fought yours. Now, the silence is doing the work for you. Ever wondered who's really losing sleep? Go ahead. Share your thoughts below. Phase 3. When ego meets the mirror. There always comes a night when their own silence turns on them. It doesn't announce itself with thunder or tears. It arrives quietly, like a reflection they can't look away from anymore. For weeks, they've convinced themselves that walking away was power, that ignoring you was control. That silence meant peace. But eventually, that silence stops being protection and becomes confrontation. Because there's one thing the ego can't survive, the truth that doesn't fade. It waits. They once believed you'd be the one waiting, explaining, trying to fix what was broken. They expected to see your name light up their phone. They thought your silence was temporary, that your patience would outlast your pride. But when you didn't come back, when you didn't chase or plead, the first crack appeared. You didn't disappear out of anger. You disappeared out of acceptance. And that realization hits differently, because anger can be argued with. Acceptance can't. Now every quiet moment becomes a mirror they can't escape. The car rides without music, the empty scroll through social media, the long pauses between conversations, all of them reflect the same uncomfortable truth. The mirror doesn't lie. It shows them the distance between the person they pretend to be and the one they actually are. They look composed online, confident with friends, but deep down, they're haunted by the image of how calm you were when they expected chaos. They try to fight it, of course. They tell themselves you were the problem, that they're better off. They repeat it enough times to almost believe it. But the mind can't buy its own excuses forever. At some point, the stories they tell themselves stop working, because memories don't vanish just because you deny them. They linger in the quiet. They start showing up uninvited, like ghosts in the smallest details. The way you looked at them when you listened, the steadiness in your tone when they pushed your limits, the patience that used to frustrate them, now suddenly feels like something rare. That's how regret works. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It finds its way into the shower when their guard is down, into the car when a familiar song plays, into laughter that suddenly feels hollow. Regret is patient. It waits in silence until pride is tired. And when pride grows tired enough, the truth steps forward. One night, they'll catch themselves staring at the ceiling, feeling that strange tightness in the chest. The kind that isn't quite sadness, but something close. It's the weight of all the things left unsaid, the apology they'll never voice, the peace they didn't know they needed until it was gone. The silence they once used to feel powerful now feels like punishment, and that's when ego begins to fracture. The Stoics often said, "You can't heal what you refuse to face." And that's exactly what's happening here. The silence has become a mirror, and for the first time, they're seeing what they tried so hard to hide. That power without peace is nothing but noise. They thought distance would prove they didn't care, but instead, it revealed how deeply they actually did. That's the irony of the ego. It believes pretending makes you free, but all it really does is trap you in your own performance. You'll never see that struggle directly. They'll never admit how many nights they stare at your old photos or read your last message just to feel something familiar again. But you'll feel it, through the energy that shifts when your name comes up, through the tension in their voice when someone mentions you. Their silence tells a story their pride never will. And maybe one day, months later, you'll see a post, a song or a quote that feels a little too specific. It's not coincidence, it's confession in disguise. Because when the ego collapses, it doesn't ask for forgiveness, it looks for ways to be seen without surrendering. But you'll know. You'll see it in how they start to soften, how the distance no longer feels cold but confused, how the indifference they once wore proudly now looks like exhaustion. The truth is, when ego meets the mirror, the fight is no longer between you and them. It's between who they were with you and who they've become without you. That's the quiet war that humbles everyone eventually. They realize they didn't lose the argument, they lost the connection. They didn't lose control, they lost peace. And once you've tasted real peace, every imitation of it feels like chaos. That's what they're discovering now in silence. What once gave them power now gives them pain. Because silence doesn't take sides, it simply reveals. It shows who walked away from peace and who walked toward it. And that truth always finds its way home. Comment: the mirror never lies. If you've ever seen that moment happen, when pride finally runs out of excuses and the silence starts telling the truth for them. Phase 4. Your rise in silence. While they're still stuck in loops of what-ifs and maybe someday, you're moving differently now. You've learned that growth doesn't always announce itself. It happens quietly, in the background, in the smallest of decisions. The mornings that used to start with scrolling through their profile now start with stillness. You wake up, make your coffee, and sit with the calm. No more anxious checking, no more replaying old conversations, no more chasing ghosts. You're beginning to understand something powerful, that peace doesn't need permission. It simply needs practice. For a long time you lived in reaction, you over-explained, overgave, overthought. Every silence from them used to feel like a wound that needed closure. But now you're learning to respond with stillness. You've realized that not every message deserves a reply, not every thought deserves attention, and not every goodbye deserves explanation. You're mastering something most people never do: emotional discipline, because reacting is instinct, responding is control. There are still moments, though, let's be honest, when the pull hits. You feel that old urge to check their story, to see if they've noticed your silence, to send a message just to remind them you exist. But this time, you breathe instead of break. You let the emotion rise and pass without giving it power. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." That line hits differently when your heart is quiet and your ego is healing. Because endurance isn't just about pain, it's about patience. It's knowing that calm is built repetition by repetition, moment by moment, until peace becomes your default. This is the part of your story where transformation doesn't look cinematic, it looks subtle. You're not posting quotes about healing or proving how well you're doing. You're just living it. You go to the gym not to distract yourself, but to feel control return to your body. You read again, not to escape your thoughts, but to feed them with clarity. You find joy in the small routines, laundry folded, meals cooked, the quiet satisfaction of showing up for yourself. Because while they're lost trying to fill their silence with noise, you're learning how to live in it. The truth is, silence can break you or build you. It depends on what you do with it. You chose to build. You turned the emotional chaos that once drained you into focus. You turned your frustration into fuel. You turned your absence into structure. That's what rising in silence looks like. It's not loud. It's consistent. It's you choosing progress over pity, discipline over distraction, and reflection over reaction. There will still be days when you feel that ache in your chest, the one that whispers, maybe they'll come back. But you'll notice something different now. You're no longer waiting for them to see your worth. You're living it. You've realized your value doesn't increase when someone finally recognizes it. It multiplies when you start acting like you already know it. And that awareness, calm, quiet, unshakable, is what makes you magnetic. This stage of silence isn't passive. It's power under control. It's you understanding that strength isn't proven through arguments or explanations. It's shown through restraint. Because silence, when mastered, is not absence. It's energy conserved. Every time you hold back a reaction, you build endurance. Every time you choose not to explain, you strengthen your inner authority. And that's something no one can take from you. Maybe they still wonder about you, what you're doing, how you're so calm. Maybe they even test the waters with a text or a post meant to provoke you. But you don't take the bait anymore. You've grown past the version of yourself who needed to prove anything. You're not ignoring them out of pride. You're honoring yourself out of peace. You finally see that silence isn't about winning or losing. It's about detachment from the things that used to control your emotions. The more time passes, the more you start to enjoy this quiet rhythm. You go for a walk and notice details you used to overlook. The sound of birds, the wind brushing through trees, the way sunlight feels on your face. That's not loneliness anymore. That's freedom. You're not escaping the world. You're re-entering it with presence. You've learned that true calm doesn't come from external validation. It comes from internal stability. And here's the irony. They might think you're gone, that you've moved on, that the silence means you've stopped caring. But the truth is, you're more alive than ever, because when you stopped chasing them, you started chasing purpose. When you stopped reacting to their silence, you started listening to your own. That's the quiet shift that changes everything. The Stoics would call this self-mastery, the art of remaining centered regardless of chaos around you. It's when you stop being controlled by emotions and start guiding them instead. You no longer wake up thinking about who you lost. You wake up thinking about what you're building. Every routine, every act of discipline, every breath taken instead of a message sent. That's you rising in silence. And when they finally realize you're no longer waiting, when they sense the energy shift, when your peace starts to feel louder than their noise, they'll understand something their ego tried to hide. You didn't just walk away, you evolved. Because silence, when done right, doesn't just rebuild you, it redefines you. It's how you turn endings into elevation. Write this down and remember it the next time you feel that tug to break the quiet. Silence builds strength. It always has, and it always will. Phase 5. The shift of power. It's strange how energy changes when you stop chasing. One small shift, a silence where your reaction used to be, and suddenly the dynamic reverses. They once held the comfort of knowing you'd always respond. You were the safe bet, the predictable constant. Every time they pulled away, you followed. Every time they tested distance, you closed the gap. But now, your quiet unnerves them. They can't read you anymore, and that mystery, what once belonged to them, now belongs to you. They start testing the water, but they do it carefully. A random text out of nowhere, a reaction to your story that doesn't really say anything, a casual hey after weeks of silence, as if they didn't leave you hanging before. It's not love, it's ego surveillance. They want to know if the door is still open. They're not reaching out to reconnect. They're checking if they still have access. Because as long as you react, they still feel powerful. The problem is, they expect you to slip. They expect that familiar pattern, the one where you respond too quickly, too warmly, too emotionally. That single reply is all it takes for their ego to breathe again. I still have them, they think. It's not about care, it's about control. And that's where most people fall into the trap. They confuse reaction with relevance. But when you don't reply, when you don't give in to the curiosity or the nostalgia, something subtle but powerful happens. The illusion starts to crack. You can almost feel it in their energy. They start posting more often, suddenly appearing online more than usual. Their captions sound a little too self-assured, their smiles a little too rehearsed. You might even notice pictures that look intentionally happy, strategically timed after a day you stayed silent, but you see through it now. Behind that curated confidence is anxiety, because your calm isn't supposed to exist. You weren't supposed to move on quietly. You were supposed to still orbit them, to still give them the emotional reassurance that their decision didn't cost them anything. But now, the silence they once controlled is working against them. That's the irony. They thought your absence would make them forget, but it only made them curious. They keep trying to pull you back into the game, not because they want to win your heart, but because they can't handle losing their influence. Every time they try to provoke you and you don't react, it forces them to sit with the very thing they've been avoiding: loss. They can't manipulate what they can't reach. And when someone realizes they no longer have emotional access to you, the shift in power is undeniable. You might still feel the pull sometimes, the urge to reply, to prove you've moved on, to show you don't care. But true strength is quiet. It's in not needing to prove anything at all. Your silence doesn't come from spite, it comes from growth. You're no longer in the business of managing anyone's perception. You've learned that peace is more valuable than attention, because while they're performing confidence for the world, you're living it. Every time you choose not to respond, you teach them what real control looks like. It's not the ability to trigger someone, it's the ability to stay unmoved when someone tries. You're no longer a participant in their power game, you're the observer. You've stepped outside the emotional tug-of-war, and now they're the only ones still pulling the rope. That's why they feel so uneasy. People mistake silence for weakness, but in reality, it's the language of mastery. It says, I no longer need validation to feel powerful. It says, I don't chase what's running away. It says, I see through the performance, and I choose peace instead. And the more consistently you live that truth, the louder your calm becomes. You see, power doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't need big gestures or dramatic exits. It's the quiet confidence of someone who's done explaining, done reacting, done negotiating their worth. The energy shift isn't about control, it's about clarity. You've learned that sometimes the most powerful move is simply to stop moving toward them. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to prove you've moved on is the exact moment they start to feel the loss. Not the loss of your presence, but the loss of their control over it. They'll start to wonder why you're so calm, who you've become, and why their old tricks don't work anymore. That confusion is the beginning of their awakening, and your confirmation that you've grown. Because in the end, power isn't in the message you send, it's in the one you don't. It's in the self-control that says, I could, but I won't. That's the kind of strength that doesn't fade, the kind that turns silence into command. Ever felt that reversal, that quiet satisfaction when you realize they're no longer pulling your strings? Type energy shift below. It's not just a comment, it's a declaration that you've taken your power back. Phase 6. The silence that transforms. There comes a point when silence stops hurting and starts healing. It doesn't happen overnight. There's no sudden moment when pain vanishes. But one day, you wake up and realize something's changed. The ache that used to define your mornings has softened. The silence that once felt like punishment now feels like peace. You're no longer waiting for them to say something, explain something, or make something right. You've learned to sit with the quiet, and somehow it no longer scares you. You start to notice how stillness feels different now. The air in your room doesn't feel heavy anymore. The nights don't feel endless. You walk outside, take a breath, and for the first time in a long time, you're not thinking about what they're doing or who they're with. You're just here, present. You begin to find joy in the smallest things again. The rhythm of your footsteps, the warmth of sunlight through a window, a song that doesn't remind you of them but of yourself. You realize you don't miss them. You miss the version of yourself that still believed they cared. And now you're slowly meeting that version again, not through nostalgia, but through rebuilding. This is where the tables quietly turn. While you're learning peace, they're learning discomfort. The silence that once protected their ego is starting to expose it. They begin to feel what you once did. The waiting, the wondering, the weight of uncertainty. They can't post away their guilt forever. The smiles in their photos don't reach their eyes anymore. The noise they surround themselves with, the parties, the endless scrolling, the forced laughter, only amplifies the emptiness when they're finally alone. Their nights are getting longer. The thoughts they tried to bury now echo in their mind. They start replaying the last time they saw you, realizing how calm you looked when they expected pain. That calm now haunts them, because deep down they know it wasn't indifference, it was acceptance. And acceptance is always more powerful than anger. The same silence that freed you has now become the weight they carry. The stillness they once used to measure their control has turned into a mirror of their own regret. But here's the truth. This is where real transformation happens. The Stoics often said that peace isn't found in revenge, but in detachment. You've stopped needing them to feel what you felt. You've stopped needing any kind of payback. Because peace itself has become justice. You don't need to prove that you've healed. Your energy already shows it. While they're wrestling with restlessness, you're anchored in calm. While they keep performing happiness, you've become it, quietly, authentically, without effort. You've turned pain into wisdom. You understand now that letting go doesn't mean losing, it means choosing. Choosing yourself over chaos. Choosing clarity over confusion. Choosing to release what was never meant to stay. You've stopped trying to fix what broke you and started building what strengthens you. Your silence isn't cold, it's composed. It's not about closing your heart, it's about protecting it. You no longer react to every pull or provocation because you finally understand that peace is not passive, it's power under control. In this phase, you become untouchable in a way that can't be performed or faked. You're not trying to look strong, you just are. Because strength isn't loud, it's quiet, it's calm. It's the way you walk past the things that used to trigger you without flinching. It's the way you no longer chase closure because you've already created your own. That's what transformation looks like. It's not dramatic or visible to everyone, But those who once knew your chaos can feel the difference in your stillness. Meanwhile, they're beginning to feel the silence they once celebrated. It follows them everywhere. The empty moments, the quiet rooms, the stillness that used to comfort them when you were the one overthinking. Now they understand that silence doesn't forget. It reveals, and it's revealing everything they tried to bury. That's the irony of emotional balance. The more peace you find, the more chaos they feel. You don't wish them pain, you just know they have to walk through their own, because that's what silence does. It humbles, it teaches, it transforms. The same way it once stripped you down, it's now shaping them too. But you're no longer watching, you're moving forward. You've reached the point where the silence is no longer about them, it's about you. You've learned that peace doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you started caring correctly by protecting your energy, your time, and your emotional stability. You've learned that what's meant for you will never require you to abandon your calm to chase it. You've learned that sometimes silence is the loudest response you'll ever need. So now, when people ask how you manage to move on, you don't give a long explanation. You just smile. Because explaining peace to someone still addicted to noise is impossible. They'll feel it when they see you, steady, focused, unbothered. That's the real transformation Stoicism teaches, to become so calm that nothing external can disturb your inner order. You're not cold, you're composed. You've turned pain into patience and silence into strength. What once felt like the end has become your evolution. Comment, peace is power, if you've felt that shift, when silence stops being a wound and starts being the weapon that healed you. Phase 7. The collapse of the ego and your ascent. Ego doesn't shatter in one blow, it crumbles in silence. It happens slowly, invisibly, under the weight of its own illusion. For a while, they believed losing you meant freedom. They told themselves they were breaking away from pressure, from expectation, from you. But the irony is, what they called freedom was actually noise, temporary distractions to drown out the calm they used to feel in your presence. Because real peace doesn't demand attention. It's quiet. And now, every quiet moment they have reminds them of you. They used to think you were the emotional one, the one who felt too deeply. But in the stillness that follows your absence, they begin to understand something deeper. Peace doesn't live in detachment, it lives in alignment. You weren't dramatic, you were steady, you weren't needy, you were nurturing. They didn't lose control, they lost balance. And that realization doesn't strike like lightning. It drips slowly with every night they can't sleep, and every morning that starts with emptiness. They see your updates now, maybe scrolling late at night when they told themselves they wouldn't check. You look calm, grounded, composed. You're not flaunting anything, you're just living, and that image burns deeper than any message you could have sent, because nothing exposes regret like witnessing someone become everything they thought you'd never be without them. They try to mirror it, of course. That's what ego does when it's cornered. It imitates what it envies. They post their own glow-up pictures, quotes about peace, maybe even stories that hint they're fine. But peace borrowed from performance never lasts. The calm they're pretending to have can't survive the weight of pretense, and soon it starts to show. You can see it in the small cracks, the forced smile, the restless energy, the inconsistency between what they post and what they feel, because you can't fake stillness. True stillness doesn't come from moving on, it comes from mastering yourself. And that's what you did. Your peace came from discipline, not display. It wasn't about making them jealous or proving a point. It was about finally being okay without the need for validation. And that's what separates you from them. Now, the same silence they once used to feel superior has become their punishment. Back then, they believed silence made them powerful because it made you question yourself. But now, it's turned against them. Their quiet no longer feels like control, it feels like consequence. Every unspoken word, every message they didn't send, every time they thought, "I'll wait, they'll reach out," it all loops back as regret. The silence that used to give them comfort now echoes with everything they tried to suppress. This is where ego collapses, not in a dramatic breakdown, but in a quiet surrender. Because when truth finally surfaces, it doesn't argue. It just sits there, undeniable. They realize that you didn't destroy them. Their ego did. You didn't seek revenge. You simply walked away and stayed still long enough for the truth to echo back. That's the power of calm. It doesn't chase, it reveals. There's a specific kind of pain they feel now, the kind that doesn't come from anger, but from recognition. They start to see what they lost, not as a mistake, but as a misjudgment. They realize that in trying to protect their pride, they sacrificed their peace. That's what ego does. It trades depth for dominance, and only understands the cost when it's too late. By the time that realization fully settles in, it's over. You've already ascended. You're not the same person they left. You're quieter, but sharper, softer, but stronger. You don't need to defend yourself or explain the silence anymore. It speaks for you. The peace that once felt impossible is now your new normal. And ironically, that calm, your calm, is what now keeps them awake. The collapse of the ego isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's the moment they finally understand that power never came from control. It came from emotional balance. And they lost theirs the moment they underestimated yours. You've become untouchable, not because you built walls, but because you found alignment. You no longer need validation from their acknowledgement. You don't need closure, attention, or proof. You're beyond all of that. You're free, calm, unbothered. That's what real power looks like. Not dominance, but detachment. Not silence that hides pain, but silence that holds peace. And when they finally see that, when their ego collapses under the weight of its own pride, all that's left is truth. The truth that you were never competing, you were growing. That you never wanted revenge, you wanted release. That you didn't win because they lost, you won because you let go. So if you've ever reached that point, where silence no longer feels like survival, but sovereignty, remember this: you didn't rise because they fell. You rose because you chose not to fall with them. Comment, silence always wins, if you know that kind of victory, the one that doesn't need to be seen, only felt. Silence doesn't destroy, it transforms. It shows who hides behind pride and who rises through pain. It reveals that peace isn't the absence of noise, but the presence of strength. Because when you can stay calm in the storm, brother, you've already won. Every moment of quiet you've endured wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And one day, the same silence that once hurt will become your greatest proof of growth. You won't need to explain it, you'll be it. So tell me, brother, when the silence finally stopped hurting, what did it teach you about yourself? Drop your answer below. Let's read what wisdom your quiet has built. Like this video if you felt that transformation. Subscribe to Stoic Station, where every silence has meaning and every lesson builds your strength. And brother, stay ready, because the next video will take you even deeper into the psychology of power and peace. I'll see you there.